OpenAI's frontier team is running a million-line codebase with 0 human-written code and 0 human-reviewed code before merge, and they're calling it negligent not to work this way. Meanwhile, the job market is splitting into AI-fluent haves and have-nots, and the open versus closed model debate just got a whole lot more complicated. From the team at the Synthetic Daily, it's Thursday, April 16th, 2026. Good to have you with us.
We went through about 50 posts, articles, and threads across LinkedIn, Substack, and YouTube to find what people are talking about today. Let's get into it.
Let's start with the thing that made us do a double take this morning. Yann Lopopolo, who leads what OpenAI calls their frontier team, recently published a lengthy essay on something he's calling harness engineering. And here's the headline. His team is running a code base with over 1 million lines of code, and not a single line was written by a human. But it gets wilder. None of it was human-reviewed before merge either. 0 code review. Let that sink in for a second.
Right, and what's interesting is, SWYX over at Latent Space has been covering this closely, and he flags that Lopopolo is admirably evangelical about the approach, going so far as to call it borderline negligent. If you're not working this way. The idea is what some people are calling a dark factory. A software production line where humans don't write, don't review, they orchestrate. They set up the harness, define the constraints, and let AI agents do the rest.
Now, this isn't happening in a vacuum. Zvi Mowshowitz just published a deep dive on what he calls auto mode in agentic coding. This is the feature in tools like Claude Code, where you skip the step-by-step human approval for every command, and instead let a classifier watch for genuinely dangerous operations. Zvi's honest about it. It's not entirely safe, but he points out that the old way, where people just click yes without reading anyway, wasn't safe either. The question isn't whether to trust the machine. It's whether the machine plus a smart classifier is more trustworthy than a distracted human rubber-stamping permissions.
So here's what I keep coming back to. What we're watching here is a fundamental shift in what it means to be a software engineer. The frontier team isn't coding. They're designing the environment in which code gets produced. And if this approach scales beyond a single elite team inside OpenAI, the ripple effects for how companies staff, organize, and think about engineering are enormous.
This next one surprised me. Nate Jones dropped a video this week that's gotten over 7,000 engagements, and it lays out a prediction that feels less like a forecast and more like a weather report. By the end of 2026, AI fluency will appear on the majority of knowledge-work job postings, not as a specialty, but as a baseline expectation, like knowing how to use email or a spreadsheet.
He points to Shopify as the canary in the coal mine. They invested early in internal AI infrastructure, things like MCP servers and LLM proxies. And now they're setting expectations that are becoming industry standard. The companies that didn't invest early are stuck in a chicken and egg trap. They can't hire AI-fluent workers without the infrastructure to support AI-fluent workflows, but they can't build that infrastructure without those workers. So they're stuck bidding for the same small pool of talent.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and honestly a little uncomfortable. Jones talks about compensation polarization. If one AI-fluent worker can genuinely do what used to require 2 or 3 people, the math on salaries changes dramatically. Companies will pay premiums for people who can demonstrate real AI leverage, not just usage, but actual multiplicative output. Meanwhile, workers whose productivity doesn't scale with these tools face serious wage pressure, even if their absolute output stays constant. He calls it the Red Queen race. You have to run faster just to stay in the same place.
And then there's the entry-level squeeze. The traditional junior role, where a company invests in training you, is getting harder to justify economically. But paradoxically, companies also want AI-native talent, which tends to be early career. So the expectations for junior employees are shifting faster than anyone can articulate, and nobody has good answers yet. Jones flags a new kind of role emerging to deal with all this output, something like design producer, which he credits to the browser company. It's not management. It's synthesis and curation, making sure coherence exists when everyone on a team can suddenly build at twice the speed.
Nathan Lambert published a piece this week called My Bets on Open Models, mid-2026, and it's one of the more honest assessments we've seen. His core argument: open models won't keep up with closed labs in every area, and that's okay. But the interesting question is where the stable balance of capabilities actually lands. The gap between open and closed is intertwined with funding dynamics, distillation techniques, and the strategic choices of who even bothers to build open models anymore.
That tracks with what we've been seeing. Yann LeCun, never one to stay quiet on this topic, posted a sharp response to what he sees as recurring attacks on open-source AI. First it was open-source AI will destroy the world. Spoiler, it didn't. Now it's open source is a cybersecurity threat because of AI. LeCun's point is characteristically direct. The exact same risks exist in closed-source systems, often more so. APIs can create bigger data and security vulnerabilities than open systems you can inspect, self-host, and secure yourself. And historically, open-source software ends up more secure because it benefits from more scrutiny.
But Lambert's in a separate conversation that overlaps in fascinating ways. He's tracking how governments are starting to realize that if AI is the most powerful technology, no global entity will want a single U.S. company or government controlling their relationship to it. He got Dean Ball from the Hyperdimensional newsletter on a call to discuss recent actions by the Department of War, and their conclusion is that government actions around AI could be a major turning point for open models, even if it takes years to become obvious. The framing of not your weights, not your brain is cute, but it points to something deeper: strategic autonomy. When frontier AI starts being governed less like software and more like a strategic capability, something Azim Azov flagged this week too. The entire open versus closed debate gets reframed around sovereignty and control, not just performance benchmarks. Now let's talk about what's happening underneath all these AI applications, because there are a couple of stories this week that are really about the plumbing. Harrison Chase at LangChain announced that their Deep Agents Deploy command now supports user-scoped memory. That means in a multi-tenant deployment, each user gets their own persistent context, their own writable agents.md file, seated on first deploy and persisted across conversations. Think about a sales team sharing a go-to-market agent. Everyone gets the same capabilities, but each rep accumulates their own knowledge about accounts, deals, communication preferences. It's a small feature announcement, but it signals something bigger. The agent infrastructure layer is maturing fast, moving from can we make this work at all to how do we make this work for real organizations with real users.
I was reading through this, and Chase also shipped usage and cost tracking in Fleet, so teams can now monitor spend across agents, users, and tools and set spend limits. That's the kind of boring but essential feature that tells you a technology is crossing from experiment into production.
Meanwhile, Elad Gil's AI is tackling a problem most people don't even think about: making backup and archive data queryable through natural language. No gestores, no pipelines, no semi-expertise. You just ask questions of your historical data in plain English, and it works across snapshots and environments. They've integrated with MCP and A2A protocols, plus environments like Gemini, Claude Code, and Codex. It's one of those things where you realize, oh, the AI agent ecosystem isn't just about the models. It's about connecting those models to the massive stores of data that organizations already have but can barely access.
That connects to something else we saw. On the pure data infrastructure side, Gadir Al-Rawayshady wrote a crisp explainer on Apache Iceberg, the format that's becoming the connective tissue underneath data lakes on AWS, Azure, and GCP. Same format, 3 clouds, 0 rewrites. The iceberg analogy is real. Above water is a SQL table you select from. Below water is metadata, snapshots, compaction, and ACID guarantees. You never see it. It just works. This is the kind of infrastructure that makes everything else possible.
One more thing before we wrap the main stories. Gary Marcus is back with Peak Absurdity Part 2, and he's doing what Gary Marcus does best, poking holes in hype with a sharp pencil and a long memory. He reminds us that back in September, when Oracle stock was riding a 43% surge on reports of a deal with OpenAI, he wrote an essay called Peak Bubble. His argument then, OpenAI doesn't have $300 billion. They don't have anywhere near it. By their own, presumably optimistic projections, they won't turn a profit until 2030. Oracle didn't have the chips to fulfill the contracts or the cash to buy them.
Now, months later, he's circling back to say the math hasn't changed. And this matters because it's not just about Oracle or OpenAI. It's about how the entire ecosystem is being valued. When you have companies trading at multiples based on contracts that require chips that don't exist, funded by profits that won't materialize for years, that's not investment. That's faith.
The broader context here is important. Nathan Lambert's piece on open models touches on the same funding dynamics from a different angle. Who's going to keep paying to build open models when the economics are this uncertain? In SWIX's coverage of companies like Box reporting record revenues over $1 billion in ARR with 28% margin shows that some companies are actually making real money in the AI era. Aaron Levy, Box's CEO, is straddling both worlds, helping the Fortune 500 by day and hanging out with early-stage startups by night. The gap between companies generating genuine revenue and companies generating genuine hype is widening. And Marcus wants you to keep your eye on which is which. All right, let's zoom out and talk about the bigger picture. What are the main themes running through everything we covered today? The first big theme is orchestration over authorship. The most valuable technical skill is shifting from writing code to designing the systems and constraints within which AI produces code, fundamentally changing the meaning of engineering.
Next, infrastructure maturation signals. Features like user scope memory, spend tracking, and natural language data querying indicate the AI tooling layer is crossing from prototype experimentation into enterprise-grade operational infrastructure.
Next, sovereignty as the new axis of the open model debate. The open versus closed framing is being superseded by questions of strategic autonomy, as governments realize dependence on any single entity's AI stack is a geopolitical vulnerability.
And the last one, credential deflation, skill inflation. Traditional signals of competence, degrees, job titles, years of experience, are losing predictive power relative to demonstrated ability to multiply output through AI tools. So if you're going to take away a few things from today's episode, here's what I'd remember.
Number 1, the question is no longer whether AI can write production code. It's whether humans should even review it before it ships.
Number 2, companies that didn't build AI infrastructure early now face a compounding disadvantage that hiring alone can't fix.
Number 3, when governments start treating AI models as strategic assets rather than software products, the entire open source debate gets redrawn around sovereignty.
And finally, the gap between companies generating real AI revenue and companies generating AI hype is becoming the most important investment signal of 2026.
That's the Synthetic Daily for today. All the sources and links are on the website if you want to dig deeper.
Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow.
See